Hi, welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. Crazy questions this month about the GPU market. Of course, graphics card prices are plummeting, but when are they going to get to MSRP? Should you buy a used GPU? Should you maybe just wait a little while? We're going to go through all of that. And of course, we've got great PC building questions like CL16 versus CL18 on your memory. Doesn't matter. What's the difference? What about CL14? What about even CL20? Oh my gosh. We'll take a look at the best PC cases. Should you use your HDMI or your DisplayPort cable, as well as a lot of other great questions. If you get value in the video, give it a like. It makes a big difference, especially to this guy right here. And of course, subscribe and click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. With that, let's jump into it. Before that, this video is sponsored by VIP SCD Key. Say goodbye to crazy expensive Windows 10 licenses and that terrible Activate Windows 10 watermark. Right now, use the links in the video description, head over to VIP SCD Key, and get a Windows 10 Home or Pro OEM license for a great price. Pick your product license, then use the PC Builder discount code PC25 for an additional 25% off. Go to the activation settings on your PC, put in the code, and boom, you have a fully licensed Windows 10 for a crazy low price, which can be upgraded for free to Windows 11. Use the links in the video description below. We got a ton of great questions about what else the graphics card market, Elite Destroyer, A2ZMC, Vlad, Legionnaires, Emmanuel, and Jason, among others. Let's take them by section. The first thing that people want to know, of course, the most upvoted comment was GPU prices. When are they going to hit MSRP? Yes, we know they're coming down. I went over that in my last GPU update video. Great news on that front, both at the new but substantially on the used graphics cards are coming down very, very quickly to the point where building a budget gaming PC makes a lot of sense right now. And frankly, if you're looking to build a budget gaming PC, check out my recent budget build guide. Green light for you guys out there. Absolutely go for it, especially with the Intel i3-12100. The thing is just an absolute price to performance monster. With like a used RX 580, you can get yourself into the game and just build a great PC. But for those of you who are sitting out there waiting for maybe like an RTX 3080, a 3090, a 6900 XT to come back to something resembling sanity, right? Over the last couple of years, I would say it's all going to happen around the merge. So Ethereum, remember, most of the demand for graphics cards right now are people who are mining cryptocurrency, and the number one cryptocurrency to mine is Ethereum. It's like 95% of the overall market cap. I know a lot of miners don't understand what that means. That just means how big, how many coins, how much profitability is out there for those coins. Ethereum's like this, and everything else out there is like this, basically. So once Ethereum moves to what's called proof of stake, once they no longer make that the GPU mineable currency, then you're going to see both a flood of used graphics cards because those miners are going to sell back all the graphics cards that they've been using to mine out there. They're going to want to recoup their investment on that. And at the same time, there's going to be increased delivery from AMD and NVIDIA. They have been ramping up their production. We should also see Intel GPUs hit the market about the same time. So it should be an overall flood in about June. That's the big question. When is that going to happen? If it happens in June, and I actually had an opportunity to have a conversation over Twitter with one of the leading Ethereum developers, Tim Byko. Very nice guy. Do not harass this man. He's doing good work out there trying to move Ethereum to proof of stake. So he's our friend. Remember, he's our friend. He was basically telling me, listen, you know, they're still in the development phase. There's still a lot of questions out there, but he felt like as long as there's no big problems that get discovered right now, they should be moving towards deploying the merge sometime around the difficulty bomb going off. Right now, that's set to go off in June. Could happen a little afterwards, could happen before that, but they don't really see a reason to delay the difficulty bomb, which begins the end of GPU mining, right? The difficulty starts ramping up slowly, and then all of a sudden it just spikes up, pretty much just killing off any GPU mining on Ethereum. They don't see any reason to kick back that bomb unless there's a major problem that they discover, some kind of big bug that they don't currently have in their vision. So that's great news for gamers. That means I think this summer is going to be just an absolute fantastic time. So we're going to see a lot of used cards. You're going to be able to get a lot of used GPUs pretty cheap. And I think eventually the new cards are going to have to, they're not going to be able to compete with that level of volume, especially Intel coming in. All the graphics card prices are going to go down. The whole situation we've been in now is that there's been way too much demand because miners have been eating up all the cards and gamers also want the cards. Now the miners are going away. It's just going to be the gamers, and the miners are going to dump in all the cards that they bought over the past year back into the pool for everybody. So sounds really, really good. So Legionnaires, of course, asks, I've mentioned getting a used GPU. Why should they trust used GPU parts? Why not just build an APU with like a Ryzen 5600G, wait for a couple more months and wait for things to go down further? Well, if you want to do that, by all means, go right ahead. I'm definitely not telling you you have to build right now. I'm just giving you the green light that this is probably the best environment we've had since November 2020 to build a budget gaming PC, as long as you're cool with buying a used GPU. Or if you're spending $1,000, frankly, you can get a new GPU, because the budget CPUs, like the i3-12100, is an amazing CPU. So I'm just really super excited about budget gaming PCs coming back. And if you're somebody who maybe has been waiting for a year to build something, I don't want to tell people you got to wait another 6 months to get maybe 15% more performance, maybe save another $50. Remember, there's an opportunity cost to everything in life. Waiting has a cost to it too. I think people, because we've just been, wait. Like, what are you waiting for? You could wait until you're old and blue in the face. I just think that the one thing you can't buy more of in life is time. So I view my time as precious. I say go for it. Build something right now. And if you want to build an APU build and you want to wait out to get something higher performance, that's another viable option as well. But I feel really, really comfortable recommending people go out. And in terms of buying a used graphics card, a lot of tech tubers have gone out and bought old mining cards, and they've tested them and they run just as well. Remember, these are electrical components. This is not a gas-fired engine or something like that. The amount of wear and tear on them versus something that has a lot of physical moving parts is significantly lower. So you should get a much longer lifespan out of them. And at the same time, I would buy through eBay or somewhere that has buyer protection. The reason you want buyer protection is pretty simple. That way, if somebody sends you a dead graphics card or a graphics card that dies, 2 weeks after you plug it back in, you can go back to eBay and say, hey, man, the guy sold me a dead graphics card, and you can get your money back. So overall, I do feel very comfortable, but ultimately the decision is up to you. So Maximilian asked a really upvoted question: what's the difference between CL16 and CL18 memory, and how do the megahertz affect the system? So let's first start off, and I don't often correct these terms because it's such a widespread misconception, it doesn't really matter anyway, but let's use the proper terms. So when we talk about memory, remember, memory is DDR4. That means double data rate. So the memory itself is not running, if you get this is a 3600 CL18 kit, for instance. This memory is 3600 megatransfers, not megahertz. It's actually running at a double data rate. So it's actually running at 1800 megahertz times 2. That's where the 3600 in the 3600 part of it comes. But you really want to know about the CAS latency. So for instance, memory that I'm recommending all the time is like 3200 CL16. The reason is because it's just the mass production point where they're producing that RAM at such a great price point right now. It's really tough to beat. But why not move up to something like this, which is a 3600 CL18? Yes, CL16 kits are going to be more expensive, but these are often not that much more money than the 3200 CL16. But the question is, are they actually faster? The way you can kind of get a rough idea of this is take the mega transfers, in this case 3600, and divide it by the CAS latency, in this case 18, and you'll come out with a ratio of 20. So that's kind of the relative speed of that memory. Now, if we compare that to 3200 CL16 memory, 3200 divided by 16 is also 20. So you find that this memory kit and a 3200 CL16 kit should run almost the same speed. Now listen, that's not necessarily universal. It depends on some applications, but that's going to be generally the kind of performance you get out of that. That's a really great way to kind of crunch the numbers and understand, are you getting a better deal and how much more are you paying for that? I hope that helps you buy better memory. HDM28, another hugely upvoted question. Maybe this is the most upvoted question. In terms of GPUs and monitors, doesn't matter if you get an NVIDIA graphics card and pair it with a Freesync monitor instead of a G-Sync monitor and vice versa. And Morphajar asked basically the same question. All right, let's start with the basics. If you want to do more deep dive into this, remember, I have a best gaming monitor 2022 video I just put out, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks ago. I'll leave a link to it down in the video description. I go through everything that you need to buy a gaming monitor in 2022, and then I make specific product recommendations at every budget and resolution level, including the new 4K 144 Hz monitors. But let me give you the nutshell version right now, just to get you started. It used to be the case that if you had an NVIDIA graphics card, you really wanted a G-Sync monitor, and if you had an AMD card, you really wanted a Freesync monitor, and that was because those variable refresh rate technologies. Remember, VRR is a technology that syncs the graphics card output with your monitor output, so they're displaying the same frame at the same time, and you don't get what's called screen tearing. And NVIDIA has their own version of it called G-Sync, and AMD has their own version of it called Freesync, although there is now just a general variable refresh rate over HDMI 2.1, but that's only for the new fancy 4K HDMI 2.1 monitors. So for most of you, don't worry about that. For PC gamers, if you're not buying one of those fancy new monitors, you're going to want to use your DisplayPort cable, and I would feel comfortable telling you to buy pretty much any new-ish monitor with whatever graphics card you have. Why do I feel comfortable telling you that now? Jason, didn't you just say I need an NVIDIA for G-Sync and a Freesync for an AMD graphics card? You used to, but it happens to be the case now that most monitors come with both Freesync and at least G-Sync compatibility, regardless of the graphics card, as long as you use the DisplayPort cable. So as long as you're doing that, you should be in pretty good shape. Okay, Roberto Martinez asked, what is actually the most upvoted question by a lot too. I can't believe I missed this. They'd like to see cases that I recommend from the budget to the high end for different motherboard sizes. And Noel asks, basically the same question too. What's the best budget airflow case under $75 USD? This is such a hard question to answer right now because the price of cases has gone way up. All the other components out there, SSDs, power supplies, RAM, at or near their historic lows right now because shipping's not really an issue. You can ship a ton of RAM sticks like this for every case that you ship out because cases are just big empty voids, right? They're big empty boxes that have to get shipped across the ocean because most of the cases are made in China. Shipping costs have gone way up. As a result, case costs have gone way up, and a lot of cases have simply gone out of stock altogether because maybe they don't make sense to ship at the current shipping rate. All that being said, let me do my best. So some of the cases that I've often gone to, like on the budget level, I know people don't like Zalman as a company. They have done some shady things in the past, but I will tell you the Zalman S2 and the Zalman S3, the tempered glass ones, I think are great. They are a pain in the rear to build in. They really are. I'm not going to say that they're like amazing. They come with Molex fans. 2 of the 3 fans are Molex. But overall, I find if you're just looking to save a lot of money and have a case that looks pretty nice in the end, that's a good case to look at. And of course, I would get the glass ones. I would not get the acrylic ones because that acrylic scratch is so easy. There's 2 versions of them. Just buyer beware on that. The cases that I like right now, Fantex P360A has been one of my go-tos. I really do like that case. Getting up there in price. I love the Corsair 4000D. I think those are great cases for airflow. Some of the other cases, there's a lot of off-brand names that I'm looking at right now, and I'm really questioning. Like there's an Aero one for like $60 with 4 ARGB fans on it. Looks really interesting, but I'm having to go kind of deeper and deeper into the product stack now to find cases just because of the shipping issues right now. So I don't know when that's going to alleviate. On the high end, I got to tell you, I love either the Fantex knockoff or the original Lian Li 011 Dynamic. The Mini's great. Those are really fantastic cases. I'm not as excited by cases. I know everyone's super excited by like the Fractal Torrent, and now they've come out with a micro ATX and an ITX version of it. That aesthetic is not really kind of my aesthetic, but I can definitely see where some people love the airflow on it, love the setup of it. I'm not the biggest fan of it, just it doesn't seem to have as much water cooling support. Fantex P400A and P500A are great cases. Actually what we did, our Ryzen 5600X gaming build. I absolutely love that case. It's got a really cool LED strip on it, really nice fans. Overall, absolute joy to build, and that's about the $130 level. But if you're looking at some older cases that I really like, Fractal Meshify C is a great case. We did our Ryzen 5900X build, and that love that case. So those are some of the ones that I would take a look at now. But again, pricing is all over the place. I think that's the biggest challenge right now. All right, we got a really great question, and we're joined by the channel builder extraordinaire, Mr. Bear himself, Ambrosius the Cat. So QT Pie asks, I do a fair bit of work on their PC, and honestly, they rarely switch off. Some of their renders can take a day or 2 on their own. Now, as a cat person, they have to clean the front panel and the PSU filters basically every week, but they don't do the inside nearly as often. They want to know how to do this for pet lovers, maybe do a cleaning video on it. This is actually a serious thing for those of you who own pets and you do a lot of high heat workloads over long durations, those fans just start sucking in all that air. And you can quickly find that, we find this, for instance, on our Lee & Lee LandCool 215. We did our Ryzen 5950X 3080 Ti video editing and massive gaming build. That thing will just, 200 millimeter fans on the thing will just absolutely suck in huge amounts of air, and we just find it covered with cat hair after like exporting a video or doing a long render or something like that. So what do? Well, number one, I feel like Greg Salazar really has the market cornered on PC cleaning. I mean, he's just got it covered. So this is one of the rare instances. I'll kick you over to his channel. He just has really great guides on this kind of stuff, I find. But if you're just looking for some practical tips, let me tell you, on the exterior, lint rollers. Lint rollers, lint rollers, lint rollers. And it's also just okay to have a small vacuum and actually vacuum the front of your PC case. And you can even, especially if you have something like this, where you can just easily open up the glass door, although Mr. Bear's in the way, I can't get it open all the way. You could take that vacuum and you could vacuum out the fans on the inside. Now, I would turn the PC fully off to do this. You do want to be careful, though, when you're using a vacuum, that you're not going to vacuum over really any of the exposed electrical components. That's because the vacuum itself, as the air kind of twists through the channel on the vacuum, it generates a lot of static electricity. So it's something you just want to be very, very careful of. But non-electrical components you don't have to worry about shorting out, like fans and other things, the front of the fan shroud, yeah, you can absolutely vacuum that with a vacuum cleaner. The other thing you can do is just get some compressed air. You can actually get packs of compressed air pretty cheap. I'll leave a link to some that I use down from Amazon down in the video description. Remember, of course, always PC off when you do this. PC off, power supply off. Now that's probably every 3 to 6 months do that. Of course, over longer periods of time, I would recommend once a year, you just go ahead, pull off the panel of the PC. I would just unslot the graphics card itself. Like a lot of areas where you're gonna see more dust build up is in the fin stack here. So just blowing some compressed air in. Every couple years, you are gonna wanna take off this fan shroud. Maybe I'll do a teardown, but you can see even, I don't know if you can see this on camera or not, but there's actually a power pin here for the fan itself. This is where the fan connectors plug into the PCB on the graphics card in order to get power. So you want to be careful when you're disconnecting things like that and taking the fan shroud away. Of course, when you do that, you're also going to need to repaste the graphics card. So just make sure that you're down for that before you jump into it. Those are the kinds of things that I would take a look at when you're cleaning your PC. All right, Xenius and Horjoth87 ask essentially the same kind of question, and it has to do with pairing your GPU with your CPU. What about the core counts? Should you go up on the core in order to future-proof it better? And is it reasonable to expect that the CPU is going to last a couple different generations of graphics cards? And should you think about that when you're sizing them together? This has been kind of the perennial question for a while now, ever since we left behind kind of 4-core, 4-thread CPUs, and we've been moving up in core count. Now, that's been good, but some people get overly stuck, I find, on the whole core count idea. And I was especially talking about this in light of like the i3-12100 and i3-12100F. That is a powerhouse processor that trades blows with the 11400, a 6-core, 12-thread CPU going up against a 4-core, 8-thread. You'd think, oh, well, geez, the 4-core 8-thread has no chance. It actually crushes it in gaming, and it trades blows with it in all kinds of various multi-threaded workloads. Now, why is that? Well, if one's got 4 and one's got 6 cores, it's because those 4 cores are far more powerful. Remember, if it were just core count, we would be using like 10-year-old Xeon processors with 12 cores and 24 threads. That's why, for instance, a processor like the 5600X, people were like, well, no, I want to get a 3700X. It's the same price just about. And I was telling people, no. The 3700X will slightly beat the 5600X in multi-threaded workloads, even though it's got 8 cores and 16 threads versus the 6 cores and 12 threads of the 5600X. But the 5600X is so much faster single core, it will smoke it in gaming. And that's why it was a really, really good upgrade. That's why you can see 15 to 20% more performance by dropping in a 5600X as opposed to a 3700X in your gaming PC if you have a high-end graphics card. I wouldn't overthink the cores and threads because the likelihood is 3 years down the track, the CPUs are going to be so much faster that it's not going to matter whether or not you got a 5800X or a 5900X now versus in the future, whatever the CPUs are going to be that are 6 cores. They might start beating like the 5900X in just 3 to 5 years. We'll have to see, but that's the pace of technology we're on now. So honestly, when you're sizing your CPU, just get something that's not going to bottleneck you right now. Buy your CPU for right now, knowing that when it comes time to upgrade, you're probably going to get 1 graphics card generation out of it at the pace of technology, but you'd be lucky if you get 2. So it's okay, especially if you're thinking about something on the lower end. Maybe instead of the i3, yeah, you go with the i5. That might get you a little bit more time, but honestly, maybe not as much as you think. All right, speed round. Joshua Ferguson asks, they're an amateur photographer. They want to edit photos. They want to store them. They want to play some games. Can they do that on 1 computer or do they need 2? You can absolutely do that on 1 computer. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to up the CPU power and you're going to want to up the amount of memory that you have. So I would look at getting something like at least a Ryzen 5800X, an 8-core, 16-thread processor. Though right now for this kind of work, honestly, i5 12600K is hands down the place to be. It's an amazing CPU, great for gaming, amazing for this kind of productivity. We'll see how Ryzen 7000 does against it. We'll see how Ryzen 5800X 3D that's coming down the pike that's still the AM4 does against it. The other thing you're going to need is memory. You're going to need at least 32 gigabytes of memory. And depending on your workflows, and double check everything you're doing, you can actually soak up a lot of memory on some of these programs. 64 gigs is not out of the question, and 128 is definitely not out of the question either. GPU, you tend to want to then get an NVIDIA GPU. The encoding's a little bit better, although AMD's come a long way, and the Intel GPUs that are coming should also be pretty good for that as well. We'll have to see how they perform overall in productivity workloads versus their AMD and NVIDIA counterparts. But that's what I would look at building a productivity-oriented gaming PC. All right, Carl Frank, there's tons of easy-to-follow guides to build a PC. Not a lot of them in terms of what you should do after, how you should configure the settings, install the OS, the drives. Most of the guys that he's seen are too complicated because he feels more like a noob. And I definitely have in the works plans to do a video on this. Well, let me give you at least this in a nutshell. The very first thing I would do is make sure your PC posts. Once your PC posts, jump into the BIOS, just make sure everything looks like it's running okay, like all the memory sticks are being recognized, that all your SSD drives and drives are being recognized, and then everything's good to go. From there, I wouldn't change any of the settings yet. I wouldn't activate XMP. I wouldn't activate DOCP yet because I want to get a really nice, clean Windows install. Now, maybe this is just something left over from the days of installing, Windows in days gone by, where if you got a crash during that Windows install, you could end up having to do the whole thing over again, and it was a real pain. These days, it doesn't seem that PCs and SSDs are fast enough now. It doesn't take nearly as long to install Windows. Goodness knows we're not doing it off a CD drive anymore, a DVD drive anymore. But I still stick to the mantra that I don't change any of the settings until I've got my Windows installed. I then run Windows Update until it will not run anymore until it's completely done. I dump in the chipset drivers for AMD. I dump in my graphics cards drivers. You're gonna have to do a couple of restarts there. And then once I feel like I've got all the core pieces installed, I'll run a Cinebench on it just to make sure it looks like it's working properly. And I'll compare my scores versus other scores on the web. As long as I'm in the neighborhood, you can get a lot of variance in the Cinebench scores sometimes. So as long as you're in the neighborhood and you're feeling good about it, then I would go back into the BIOS. And only at that point would I activate XMP. Once all the drivers and all the underlying stuff that's going to make the operating system go are installed, then I'll go back, I'll activate XMP or DOCP, clock my memory up to where it's supposed to be clocked. I'll then turn on Precision Boost Overdrive. It's an AMD PC. Maybe unlock the power limits if it's an Intel PC. And then from there, you can it's safe sledding the rest of the way. I do have plans, of course, to do a whole video on this, but that should get you started. Stellos asks, what's something that really motivates me in life and in terms of making YouTube videos? Keep up the amazing work. Well, thank you very much for that. Really quickly, something that I just really enjoy. I love when people comment on our videos, and as you'll probably notice on a lot of videos, we try and answer every single comment if we can, if it's asking for an answer. Obviously, you can't get to all of them. We prioritize subscribers, public subscribers first, but we do try and get to everybody if we can. And it's becoming harder and harder as we get bigger and bigger because the volume of comments is just becoming overwhelming. We're discussing some ways to approach that. We'll, of course, announce something at some point with it. But overall, I think it's just more than anything interacting with the community. I love it when people say, hey, you helped me build my PC. I love bringing people in to the PC building sphere. I have a very different view, I think, than some other folks who are like, oh, you're a noob, you're this. They want to beat people up for not knowing things as though they were born knowing how to build a gaming PC. I mean, come on. Nobody was born knowing how to do this stuff. They've just been doing it for so long that they forget that they were new once too. I want to open those doors up. I want people who are older building PCs. I want people who are younger building PCs. I want people all over the world building gaming PCs, because this is one thing I feel like as human beings, we can share a passion and a love for gaming, the productivity that you can get out of it, the just sense of accomplishment of putting it together. That's something I really want to share with folks. Remember to give the video a like if you got value of it. It makes a big difference to the channel, especially this guy right here. He really appreciates reading all your comments. Heck, how do you even know it's me responding most of the time? It's probably him. He's the real star of the channel anyway. And of course, subscribe and click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. Now, if you are thinking about building a budget gaming PC or just want to see what the market looks like, check out this video right here. We go through what it takes to build a budget gaming PC. You can actually do it right now. They are back, and you can do it for less than $1,000. In many cases, less than $700 or even $500. It's pretty cool. But with that, we'll catch you on the next one.